put on the floor by the member for Edmonton Strathcona on behalf of the member for Edmonton Highlands Norwood. Oh boy, this is a really important amendment for, I would say, any constituency that's included in the core of cities, especially anything that's dealing with sort of traditionally disenfranchised voters, people who may be in emergency overnight shelters, transition housing, may not have what's considered kind of traditional government identification like a driver's license, a worker ID, that kind of thing. So we have a sort of series of cascading events that happen here. You've got somebody that's homeless or recovering from drug or alcohol rehab. They've been away from home long enough that their ID isn't valid anymore, so in effect they don't really have ID. So they want to vote. They need to be, and it's allowing, in other places we're allowing that if they don't have the two pieces of ID that satisfy, that a person whose name is on the voters list may vouch for the individual. So the term elector is very important here because it's signaling someone whose name is on the voters list. Now that's a whole other cascading problem. I'm going to back up one cascade here to just talking about the difficulty that it kind of dumps the load here of vouching for one elector vouching for one elector. It dumps that load onto the voluntary-based or NGO organizations that tend to be dealing most commonly with people who may be trying to vote without ID. Okay, so who's that? That's pretty obvious stuff. So it does tend to be shelter workers, people that are around those shelters, rehabs, transitional housing, that would know someone and could say, yes, I know they were here last night, I can vouch for them. And you see, it's even saying a person who does not have ordinary residence is deemed to reside at the shelter, hostel, or similar facility that most frequently provides services to the person, but you still have to have somebody that can vouch that that's where they were last night, right? We're looking for the residency in Alberta bit. But now by saying that that the elector can only vouch for one person, you basically would have to have, I don't know, a couple of hundred volunteers at the emergency shelters if they can only vouch for one person. So I think there's just, people haven't thought far enough ahead about what's being contemplated here. Because we need to be able to have a shelter worker that can say, yes, I can verify that, and then go through pretty much everybody that they know and can verify were at the shelter last night. But to say, no, that person can only verify for one person, where are we supposed to come up with the rest of the electors who can verify for the rest of the people in the shelter? I hope that wasn't too convoluted, but that's what's being set up in this section. So when you read the actual act, make sure I've got it. Yeah. No elector shall vouch for more than one elector at an election. So that's where the problem's created, and that's what's trying to be addressed by essentially striking out that section. Now, there's a second problem that is created here, is that the term elector has specific legal standing. An elector is someone whose name appears on the election list. You have to be on the election list already. Well, given the difficulties that we're having in trying to get a permanent voters list, the number of people that got knocked off voters list in the last election and nobody can explain why, the issues around enumerating. So our fail rate on the getting people on the properly onto the electors list last time was really high. And the percentage of changes was also accordingly high. So, sorry, I'm just looking for those recommendations because they did give us an indication from the big electoral book of how many changes had to be made. to the electors list, how many changes were made between the closing of the possible changes time period and then how many changes were made following. And I mean, there was like 7,000 people. In my constituency, there was 7,000 people that were put on the voters list once the election campaign had actually begun, so the official revised voters list. Over 7,000 people in my constituency, which is just a staggering number of people. So now that's the additional complication that's caused by this. If we do not support this amendment, we're now in a situation of trying to find the people that are actually on the list and may not even know that, for example, they didn't make it on the list or they got dumped out. So trying to find the person who is an elector, is already on the voters list, that is able to verify the individual without the identification becomes it really does disenfranchise a very specific group of people, an identifiable group of people, because they tend to be they're I'm trying to be descriptive here without being discriminatory. I would argue that you're likely to find that group of disenfranchised people are more likely to be residing in the centre of the cities where you have the services that they would be seeking. For example, things like overnight shelters, transitional housing, rehab, even the day shelter programs that are available. So that's the problem that has been created in this Act that I think needs to be addressed and has been picked up by the member for Highlands Norwood. And I really think we should be supporting this, because if we don't, we've created not one but two problems here. So I hope that we can get some support from the government side to make sure that this particular amendment passes. Thank you.